Whenever you're ready.
All right, so welcome back to Stories from the Trenches. I'm your host, Juliana Stancampiano. I'm on the board for the Sales Enablement Society, and this is our third episode from the trenches. We have had the opportunity to have Mike Keeley on from EMC Dell and Chris Kingsman before from TransUnion. And today I'm really excited to have Heng Black with us. She is somebody that I have had the opportunity to meet through the Sales Enablement Society. And if you haven't met her, she is definitely a force in the sales enablement industry that we're all in. So I'm looking forward to having her today. And we're going to talk, we've covered some how to set up sales enablement as kind of a functional view with some of the last conversations and what that looks like and how to do that successfully. But today I'm excited to have Heng because we're going to start talking about kind of the future of sales enablement, how people are seeing it today, where we think it should be going. And we're going to learn from a lot of the journeys that she's been going through in her different roles based at a hub of innovation down in the Bay Area, which is awesome. And I'm going to let Heng do some introductions of herself and her background, and then we'll run forward with the conversation. So Heng, welcome.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for having me. So just to give you a little bit of perspective of my professional background, I spent 7 years in engineering down in Austin, Texas. And then I had the opportunity to move to Cisco, where I started as a technical marketing engineer, went through product management, then product marketing, then central marketing, doing what I would call sales enablement from marketing for sales, to then eventually at the end of my career at Cisco doing sales enablement from sales for sales. And that's a really important distinction that we'll talk about later. It's been about 4 years since I left Cisco. In the interim, I had 2 years where I was a consultant in sales and marketing, operations, branding, enablement, field marketing, and I just found that I had a love towards sales enablement specifically. And I treasure those years because it gave me a lot of opportunity to basically speed date amongst different verticals, different sizes of companies, different journeys, where they are in their journey of sales enablement. So it let me become a more effective sales enablement leader myself. I then joined one of my top clients, a cybersecurity company named Gigamon, where I led their worldwide direct sales and SE enablement. I then moved over to 8x8, a unified cloud communications company, where I led global enablement for direct and indirect as well. And now I'm here at Juniper Networks, a 9,000 person company. So the challenge keeps growing, but it's awesome. And the bigger the challenge is, the more complex the enablement organization and the more impact we can make. So it's been a very exciting journey.
That's awesome. And I love how you ended a career and then restarted a new career, right. Basically along the way. And also you've gone from very large companies, right? Like ginormous enterprise companies, back down to smaller companies. And now you're at a company that is of a larger workforce. So I'm curious if you can share with us just, as you've been through this journey, what did it look like and where are you at today? And what are you seeing as you head into this new role with Juniper?
So what's been very interesting to me is it's not really the size of the company that matters so much, or not even the tenure of the company. There is a misconception that the larger the company, the more mature the sales enablement organization is. That's actually not true. Some of the startups have a really big heads up on us because they started with this enablement organization immediately from the get-go. And it lived in 100%. Sales. And then there's another misconception that the larger the company, the more naturally dispersed the enablement organization is. That's not necessarily true either. I'm not saying that one's more effective than the other, but we know, for instance, the hyperscaler companies, Salesforce, Amazon, their enablement organization is still an intact organization. And in fact, did you know that Amazon, for every 70 quota-carrying headcount, they immediately activate an enablement headcount? It's just, they're forethoughtful about it because they know it's a key lever.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I would say we see something very similar. In fact, we're helping a ginormous enterprise right now set up sales enablement, which seems so odd because you would think that they would have it together, right? And that they would be on the forefront of that, but it just isn't how it works necessarily. So yeah, we've seen a lot of very similar things, which is very cool.
I see.
That's great. So yeah.
So I'm sorry. I see sales enablement as kind of three waves. One wave where it's kind of enablement that it's brought up because there's a vacuum. There is no enablement. So it will tend to come up out of either the training organization in HR, or it will come up out of the sales engineering organization. So let's call that enablement 1.0. And then it starts popping up in silos. Some in marketing, some in training, some in HR, some in sales engineering. 2.0 would be where you have enablement being brought under one umbrella. So we see that as a trend in the industry as well. Where I see, if we're looking around corners, where enablement is going is being much more involved in the talent leadership and culture development piece of it. So not only are you enabling, you've got everyone under one umbrella, but you're no longer enabling by transmission. You're actually inviting sales into the process, into the conversation to help build the messaging, to help build the prioritization, and then engaging the first line managers to make sure that they're the multiplier effect. And then on top of that, making sure that we develop and nurture our talent culture and culture pipeline.
Yeah, so that's fascinating. We've been hearing, some similar things, and a lot of those things that you just talked about have traditionally sat in HR.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about that and kind of where you see this going. And why do you think it's being kind of rolled in? I have thoughts, but I'd love to get yours.
Well, first and foremost, when an enablement organization is invited to the table, the first conversation is, hey, you got to decrease my ramp time from 9 months to 6 months, okay? And so for an enterprise company, the first thing I'll say is, that's great that you would love that, but let's look into the data a little bit. And it's never 9 months to begin with. It's typically somewhere between 12 and 18 months to start with. Okay, if I do that, if I want to shorten ramp by 1 or 2 quarters, I can do that by a couple of methods. I can improve my onboarding process. But if you look at the competency ladder, the first step of the competency ladder is the unconsciously incompetent, right? So would it then not behoove us to not bring those folks into the into the equation at all? Because it takes a lot more time and effort to ramp them, especially if you have a robust program. It's expensive to ramp them. It takes a lot of time and energy to train somebody well. And then you lose them in the first 3 to 6 months. So not only are you shortening, do we want to shorten the ramp time, we want to not burden the existing people with bringing, with the talent we bring along. So in the last couple functions that I have, I work very closely with our HR team to build a very uniform and global talent profiles, job descriptions, even interview process, interview rating process. So that's where we're already starting to engage our HRBP and our TA team. And then as we're onboarding even, my team, when we have a person on board day 1, they get to onboard with HR, they get their laptops, they get their benefits, but day 2, they get 4 emails from my team. The first one is, here's what your on-ramp program is going to look like, here's the on-demand side, here's the checklist side, here's when you're scheduled to come for in-person training, and then the emails 2, 3, and 4 are calendar pop-ups with the hiring manager, the new hire, and the enablement person to go through their metrics, their quantitative metrics, their qualitative leading indicators, and the 90-day check-in is with the HRBP. So we've got to be very tightly aligned with HR on this for our on-ramp. Now, and then let's talk about ongoing. We know that talent that stays greater than 23 months, at 2 years, at least my personal experience has been at 2 years, we generally get somewhere between a 1.5 to 2x multiplier of their first year's performance. And that makes sense if we really believe that in an enterprise company, typical on-ramp time is 12 to 18 months. Now, if we can get them past the second year and we have them 3, 4, 5 years, then your multiplier somewhere is between 2 to 4x of the first year. So it's really important to keep nurturing our talent as well.
Yeah, so that's super interesting, and this is something that was brought up yesterday. I was in Dallas at UT Dallas with Howard Gilbert, who's part of the SES, and listening to a lot of people speak, and there was a lot of discussion around onboarding, I think, as there always is. And I would be curious to know, how do you, so you're saying it's 12 to 18 months, how do you, what's the measurement of being onboarded in your mind?
So a lot of enablement, we're pretty good at measuring the attainment indicators. I use what's called AMP, which is activities to meetings to pipeline. How does that grow at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and how does it grow at 6, 9, and 12 months? And my expectation is if enablement is doing well, that time will shorten, or the activities in the SA, the attainment will increase and the time will shorten over time, cohort to cohort, until, of course, you reach the 80-20 rule. So that's one piece of it. But then there's the qualitative indicators as well. So at 30 days, we look at how their corporate pitch looks like. At 60 days, we look at their ability to pitch at a segment level with a canned demo. At 90 days, we ask them for a more deep dive place in network pitch. That's more on the qualitative side. You can also look at it at 30 days. We ask them for a pre-call review. At 60 days, we ask them for a prep call or a post-call review. So we're continuing to groom and build hunting skills, but also the customer relationship skills as well, and understanding of the sales philosophy and how it maps to the sales process.
That's great. So I think there's so many multiple things that you've pointed out, or that you've just talked about, that I want to point out for the members. So A, you have a really specific timeline and expectations from an activity and also an outcome perspective for the people that you're supporting. And what I love is that it's broken down and it's a multi-year journey, and it's not that people are just going to be able to rock up and, a month in, they're onboarded and they should be able to do their job, which unfortunately we do still hear a lot about that. And it's a lot more thoughtful and planned out, and it's based around both the activity that somebody's capable of doing, and then it's also based around the outcomes that they're driving, for the role that they've been hired for. And I think that those are really, really crucial things as people are thinking about what is sales enablement, how do we measure sales enablement. These are things that are helpful to have in that plan, and also to have timed out and to set expectations around timing. Yeah. So I'd be kind of curious about how that goes for you and what the conversations are like, because that, in my mind, is something that we don't always see, is that, somebody in an executive suite says, I want faster X, and how do you deal with that, and how do you talk about expectations around what people can and can't do, and how long it'll take?
Yeah, so we just have to start with, so on the quantitative side, as I mentioned earlier, it's really, really important to benchmark where you are. Start from where you are and have very realistic examples. And it's sometimes a tough conversation with the C-suite, but they really appreciate when you dig into the data and kind of set the tone of, well, I'm not trying to sandbag, but I just really want to set everyone's expectations. And they really appreciate enablement leaders who understand the math and the data behind it. So that's one. On the other hand, people buy from people. And we know that in yesterday's traditional model, and this is information that I want to give credit to the Challenger method for, we know that in yesterday's traditional model, marketing tells the group what they want, sellers tell them why and when to take the order. And it's usually a one-to-one transaction. But with digital disruption, we know that buyers are more active in their information gathering. They already know what they want. They already know why they want it. So they search for answers online, and they depend on their network and community. So in 2014, this is data again from Challenger and CEB, in 2014, the average B2B opportunity took 5.4, I believe, decision makers. In 2016, it was 6.8. 2018 numbers, 10.6 decision makers, okay? So what does this tell you? If we all agree that buyers are more savvy, does it then not follow that sellers have to be a lot more savvy? So sellers have to move from not just product selling to solution selling, but insight selling. So to go back to your question, on the qualitative indicators, I want to make sure that our sales team has a voice in the development of messaging, in the development of sales process, but then we also hold them accountable. So in our 30, 60, 90-day journey, in our 6, 9, 12-month journey, we have indicators of how are you connecting to the buyer as a human, as a, I don't want to use the overused term of trusted advisor, but how do you provide them insight? Yeah. You must have a point of view, and you must have a process and a discipline behind it that, yes, you yourself, or at least your sales representation has been involved in the process. So those two are very important components, that sellers are involved in the process because buyers are more savvy, but then we hold them accountable to it too.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's super helpful and concrete, right, for the people that are listening on, you know, if they're thinking about doing this or how to do this. These are some of the ways in which you can approach it. I'd be curious to kind of pivot now and say, so you're in a new role, you've been doing a lot of discovery. Like, what have you learned over the last 4 months being at a new company and starting to, you know, do the work that you do over again? And can you share some of the insights there?
Absolutely. As much as I've done consulting, it never ceases to amaze me how very unique every single company and situation.
Yes.
Size, vertical, in some ways it's all the same, and in some ways they are all so uniquely different. And as I mentioned to people, I went into engineering because I love numbers and I love solving hard problems. I went into sales because turns out I love numbers with dollar signs in front of them a lot more.
I'm going to ask you about that at the end of the podcast, about that transition. So you just kind of summarized it for me. That's great.
Yeah, so it's been a really fun journey. My experience here has been, I'll tell you some things that are common. The things that are common are that there's also a misconception that sellers are lazy and they don't want any, they don't want any learning and development and training and anything at all. So not true. Every company I've gone to help with, and you know this, Juliana, with your work, they're hungry for it. But it's just got to be, it's like a love language. Again, buyers buy from people. And in my role, my sales force, they're my stakeholders. I'm selling to them. Yeah. I've got to make the content relevant to them. I've got to be able to speak in their language, which is also why it's very important for sales enablement to sit as closely within sales as possible, or have that very trusted relationship with sales. We have to be able to speak their language, which they and myself included have attention spans of goldfish. It has to be bite-sized, it has to be relevant, it has to be digestible, and the most important thing actually is that they have to be able to find it when they want to, which means, and look, I am an ex-product manager and ex-product marketing person. I get it. When I was a product manager, and that's why I go through my career progression with everyone. Like, as an engineer, I get it. I love my features and functions. As a product manager, I loved writing my 50-page white papers. You know who reads them? Nobody. And as far as product marketing goes, I love them. They work very hard. But there is this cycle where, you know, industry statistics, and it's not just last year, it's not just high tech, it's industry statistics from forever. 65% of marketing material doesn't get opened. Okay? Yep. So sometimes what will happen is marketing folks will say, I put out this great collateral that I spent a lot of time on, but nobody's looking at it, and I really need to get the message out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create more stuff. And I'm just going to create more.
Do the same thing over and over again.
Exactly. And it's like, it's kind of what I call enablement by transmission. And if you recall earlier on in the podcast, what I was mentioning was enablement from marketing for sales versus enablement from sales for sales. I'm not saying enablement from marketing for sales is not important. It absolutely is. But there has to be, no matter where enablement sits, there has to be a translation layer for people who speak the language of sales and to filter down. So when I was at Sales Kickoff, I remember saying, I know that everyone's trying to hit you up for your time and attention. Engineering, marketing, me, HR, your customers, everybody's trying to get your attention. So what if my commitment to you is that in that great funnel of awareness, I'm the little spout. And my team helps filter out the content, brings up what's top of mind, and then we give you a call to action of, if you need to see more, here's where you can get more. How about I do that for you? Yay, awesome, everyone buys into it. Okay, but on the back end, if we're going to do that for you, we're going to measure you, and we're going to measure your consumption to your attainment. And there, in general, everyone says, awesome. Let's go for it. So there's that misconception. That's the thing that is uniformly same across all organizations. What is different is that, honestly, the biggest difference is the maturity of the organization. Where does enablement fit? Who does it report to? What is its remit? Is it just training? Is it just onboarding? Is it ongoing? Are partners involved? How much of internal enablement is directly turned into partner enablement? And the new trend of, again, looking around corners, the new trend is, how does that enablement turn into end user buyer enablement? Because what we find is, as we go down the pipeline, it's not just our sellers have short attention span. Our partners have even shorter attention span because they're selling to multiple markets and they've got multiple vendors that they're servicing. And then they've got to get the attention of the customers. You can always, you got to go broad to go deep. So you've got to be able to capture people's attention first and then let them pull down information. And that's why 57% of most buying decisions are made even before the first phone call.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, customers, and I like it as a customer that I have a lot of knowledge, right, that I can pull from, and I go out and do my own research before I narrow, and I think probably a lot of us do, before we narrow it into like 2 or 3, potential things that we're going to buy, and then we deep dive with those, and we need to know then how it's going to work. But we've kind of, we've seen this with another customer that I think is interesting is, this is on the customer service side, which I think there's lots of parallels, right, between customer service and sales, because customer service can also be an entry point for sales, but they're trying to educate their customers to essentially get rid of a tier 1 call, and in order to do that, they're using the calls to enable their customers to be able to self-service the easy things for themselves. Where's my username and password? How do I log onto the site and see my billing, for example, and then educate them on what else they could be doing and what else they could buy while they're there. And I find that really fascinating because, and there's different demographics, right? But for me, I would rather self-service myself at that level than need to call anybody, because that's going to take like way too much time. I don't want to talk to somebody about this.
Absolutely. And so, the interesting thing about that statistic too, if 57% of decisions are made before first phone call, first of all, it's your deal to lose. If you're the one that gets to be on the other end of it, your deal
100%.
Secondly, so you've got for the most part, the customer's bought in, so you've got to keep the deal. But it also means that you have to fight. You still have to fight for it. So as someone on the 43% side, you still have the opportunity to change the mind of that buyer if you can somehow represent yourself as an insight seller.
Yes. And you have to know then your customer, right? Like, it drives me crazy when when we do get to that spot and they've done zero research about what it is that we do and what kind of company we are. Because to your point, at the end of the day, every company has differences in nuance and context within them that makes them wildly different. But I'm a services company, so I'm going to have a lot of similarities to other services companies. So how do you draw on that to know how to approach that sale?
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, when we first started talking, we talked a little bit about what is sales enablement and what does it mean to the people, in the organization that you just joined. And I'm curious to just have some commentary about that, of what people thought sales enablement was, or how it was viewed kind of before you joined, and then where you're at and what you're transitioning to, if you are transitioning at all.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. When I joined, I had the opportunity to introduce myself at Sales Kickoff, and just again to test the waters and see what the expectations were. I'd already gone on a listening tour. I'd already interviewed about 60 different people to get their perspectives. And I asked the sales team, audience of 2,000 people, hey, how many of you here, penalty-free zone, how many of you here believe that enablement is training? Easily 80% of the population, if not 90% of the population. Okay, great. So then when I kind of delivered to them what the enablement portfolio could look like outside the walls of the company, and again, with people tend to get into their own mindset, even if they've been in multiple companies, they've been in the same vertical, they've been in the same space. So it was actually really refreshing to be able to articulate to the sales team that, hey, enablement not only are people that that prioritize and highlight for you what's top of mind, that aligns with the company's objectives, but we're also your voice back into the rest of the company, and we're going to get your DNA, the DNA of our top sellers, back into the rest of the company. It was very exciting for them. Now, it was easier for them to adopt than obviously the rest of the company, because people also feel very protected. Hey, you're encroaching on my space. I know what I'm doing.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? But what has come about, I'm 4 months in now, what's come about now is people are seeing the partnership. Wow. Sales really does know what they're talking about, and we really could use their input, and we make each other better. It's not a zero-sum game. Just because we invite sales to the table does not mean we're taking anything away from you. We collectively add cognitive diversity that benefit our customer. So if we think about customer centricity in the product, we have to think about customer centricity even in how we deliver the product and who we deliver it by.
So that's great, and I want to highlight a few things, and then I'm going to try to bring us to a close, because we're trying to keep these things fairly short for our audience as well, right? A is that I'm kind of curious to know, how did that feel when 85 to 90% of the people raised their hand and thought it was really just training?
It felt great, because if for me, in my role, then I know high impact, that's why I'm here.
Only place to go is up?
That's right.
Like, I got this.
That's right. High impact, they're not even going to know what hit them, and they're going to freaking, and it's absolutely been the case, So I really enjoy it, and I feel very honored to be in this space, because I do look at enablement. We have the best of both worlds, man. We get to be the trainers and teachers inside of us, but we also get to be very business-minded. So it's a fun space.
Totally. So the other thing that I want to highlight, because I don't always hear people talk about it, and I think it's so crucial, is that partnership and that cross-functional view of working together for the outcome versus, no, I'm now sales enablement, and like, to your point, I'm not here to take over the world, because that doesn't make any sense. Like, we need marketing, we need HR, we need IT, we need all these people to help, and you're the funnel, right, that goes out to the sellers, because otherwise they get blasted constantly with all sorts of stuff. So sometimes I see it, like you said, the translation layer, I think that's awesome, and also like kind of not the gatekeepers, but like the protectors of the sales audience, to make sure that everything that's getting to them is relevant for them, so that they will start consuming it and they will start going and getting the stuff where you're putting it, and feed that out there, and then in turn, to your point, so you can measure it. So how is it that you're creating these relationships to be really healthy across the organization, so that you guys can be a more united front for sellers and sales enablement?
I won't lie, it takes a lot of time. I joined the company on a Monday. I called my boss on a Friday and said, I need to fly to the UK on Monday. And he said, Sure. Can you tell me why? And I said, look, I need to go touch the people who feel the most unloved. And it has to, and generally, it's the geos outside of the U.S. when you have a global headquarters in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's the geos outside of the U.S. It's people who are in the trenches. You know, I'm not just talking to the leadership. I'm talking to people, you know, feet on the street as well.
Yeah.
And that is, and that's true of the other organizations. So it takes time to build credibility, to have conversations with people, see where their heartaches are as well. With my field, just like we talk about with our sellers all the time, we teach our sellers to identify the customer's pain point, right? So I do the same with my stakeholders. My customers are my sellers. I understand their pain points, but my partners are also my stakeholders, and I understand their pain point. They can't get to the sales. So okay, how do we work together to do that? So as we mentioned earlier, we wanted to do just-in-time, bite-sized chunks. So you know, a lot of the content creators tell me, well, that's really hard, and I tell them, I know it's hard. I know it's hard.
Yeah.
Simple.
That's our job,
hard.
right?
So let's just do less better, and I guarantee you higher consumption. And I'm taking the time to you know, groom them to be better TED speakers, TED talkers, if you will. Imagine if you were doing a TED talk and you were limited to 18 minutes. This is how you would groom the talk. I spend hours coaching my people on how to coach other people, on how to be better content creators. And from there, the partnership grows because people say, wow, enablement doesn't just invest in salespeople with a sales lens. They invest time in us, too, in making us better for sales. So, again, it's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah, so I love it. So it's like get out, understand your audience, talk to your audience, meet them where they're at. Do the same with your stakeholders, meet them, greet them, like have face-to-face contact with people so that they know who you are and start engaging with them in the conversation. And eventually it starts to bring everybody together. That's terrific. Cool. So, Hanga, I love being able to talk to you, and I'm gonna try to wrap this up. Are there any last words that you'd like to leave with our Sales Enablement Society members before we kick off here?
My parting words would be, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's been a real pleasure, and I always love to give back to the community. But secondly, for those of us who've been in the enablement field for a while, I really want to acknowledge that we are getting a seat at the table, and let's make sure that we use that seat to drive culture in sales. Drive not only a culture of learning, but a culture of collaboration with our partners and our stakeholders, and we will get more, we will be able to collectively do better for the company.
I love it, which goes along with the Elevate mission that we have for Sales Enablement Society, right? How do we elevate where we're at and be able to service the sellers and the organizations better? Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us, and we will continue to follow you as we do.